All right, everybody. So I'm going to do a little bit of a video here for the Build Challenge Charlie. So this is going to be my third build challenge. And so the first build challenge was an air challenge. It was a trainer airplane. The second build challenge was a land challenge. It was to make a personal transport, one seat. And this is going to be the third challenge, and it's going to be a sea-based challenge. So this is going to be to build a beginner base fuel tanker, essentially, fluid tanker. Let's put it that way. So you could haul oil, you could haul diesel, you could haul jet fuel, you could haul fuel to your base. As with the changes with the Industrial Frontier DLC, you now need to be able to move your own fuel. So before you essentially could, as long as you made or launched fuel tanks, you could bring in an infinite amount of fuel. You paid, I think it was like $1 a liter or something for diesel, but you could spawn them there. Now you actually have to import your own fuel, which I'm actually all for. As with everything, I think it's nice if you have a checkbox. That way, people want it, they can disable it. If people don't want it, or people want it, they can enable it. If they don't want it, they can disable it. One reason I kind of like that they made it mandatory is, for example, it was probably unlikely that I would do a lot of fuel. I would make it this way. I actually started doing that on one of my saves, and then I kind of I decided that I didn't want to get that involved, and now you kind of have to, and I like that. And now you kind of have to, and I like that. So because of that, you have to actually go in there and move fuel around. And so I think it's important to have a tanker, and especially a lot of people don't see the viability of career. As you see, I play a ton of career. A lot of it is coming up with your own missions, coming up with your own things to do. And so one of those missions you might want to do is to move fuel to your base. So you have fuel. The other one is when you're trying to get some money. People will complain often that they don't get a lot of money for the rescues, the fires, which I don't think they're too bad, especially if you add in loot crates. But when you're trying to bring in lots of money, you can do this with commodities trading. So one of them is fluid. And so I've actually played with this a bunch here, trying to get the beginner base set up. And so one of the things I try to do before I have a challenge, which will launch the weekend of February 18th, 2023. And so what I've been doing is, kind of a lot of the rule sets and why I do things the way that I do them is because I've participated in a lot of challenges before, and I've seen where there have been issues with the challenges. So one of the reasons I lay out a nice pretty detailed rule set is, quite often the rules would change halfway through the challenge, and so you have people who would, do a bunch of their building early, and then they'd either have to restart over or they would be at a disadvantage because they were playing by the old rule set, and then a new rule set comes in, and so that's not fair. And so what I like to do is I'm going to put this video out before the weekend of the 18th, and that way you can kind of see it. The first weekend of every build challenge is going to be rules open for discussion. So there'll be a rule set that I put up. There will be minor changes, and you have the ability to go into the forum on the discussions for the build challenge. It'll be rules clarification. You can go in that forum and you can post questions. As I make rule changes, I will annotate them in the rules. You'll see rule change and the date. And then by the end of that weekend, the rules are locked. So for the rest of the challenge, rules are locked. There's not going to be, but I want this. Too bad. You had the open period. And, this might seem harsh to some, but the reason I do this is, again, previous challenges, you'd be 3 weeks into a 4-week build challenge and somebody would complain. They changed the rules. Well, it wasn't fair to those of us who had already put 3 weeks of work in that we either had to make major changes or we're at a disadvantage because now you have some people operating by a different rule set than the other people. And so that's how I'm going to do this. And so one of the things is, if it's a more complex build, so the first one was the airplane challenge, and so I did a live stream where you saw me build one. And so one of the reasons I did this is one of the things I used to really dislike about some of the challenges people would put on is you could tell that they didn't actually build the thing that they were creating the challenge for, and maybe had not ever built something like that. And so the issue was you didn't know if the rules were possible. And so if you don't ever make the vehicle, you don't know if the rule set is going to be fair or possible, or if it's going to be too difficult or it's going to be too easy. And then no wonder you get to the challenge and things aren't working, and then halfway through they have to change the rules. So I like kind of going through and building this as I go. So again, this is going to be a beginner career. It's going to be a beginner base career vessel to transport fluid. So think of a small tanker. And so here we are in the beginner base. As you can see, pretty small area. And so one of the things this will help with is this is going to help with learning how to make a stable vessel. Making tankers can be very challenging. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start building this, and I'm trying to think. I might make it more squared off, like a powered barge. I might angle it a little bit. We'll see. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to start by. Let's start by going in here, and you'll notice a lot of these barges are pretty square. So what I like to tend to do is I start by making max capacity, especially on this small base. I go by max length, and then what I'll do is I'll usually trim in two on either side. And the reason I'm doing that is if I ever need to, say, add an anchor or increase it or something, I now have 4 blocks that I have some play. If I go all the way, I can't add to it at all. So that's going to be 13.25 meters. All right, and so I looked at some reference material. I looked at some real barges. And so let me go ahead and bring up this one. And so this is a barge that, or there's a barge. This is a tanker that I looked at, and so this is it's larger than that base. So you saw it was 13.25 meters. This is 23 meters, so we're still 10 meters shorter than this. But what we can get from this is some interesting information. And so one of the things that, despite the physics not being perfect in game, and it never will be, one of the nice things you can do here, though, is if you tend to lean towards reality in game, you tend to get some good results. And so let's talk about what I mean by that. So let's look at the length to beam ratio. All right, so here's my calculator, and so what I'm going to do is do a length to beam ratio. And so we have total length is 2515, and then so the beam is the width of the vehicle. So let's find the beam here. So right there, 8 meters. It says molded breadth. So that's 8 meters. So it's going to be 8 divided by 25.15, 25.15. So we're talking a 0.31. So if we can go 13.25 times 0.31, that's above 4 meters. So if we're going to make our vessel 13.25, let's talk about 14 meters wide. Now, if I wanted to make it flatter and square like a barge, powered barge, I could do that. You notice my barges are very square. That makes it a lot easier to build, but we're going to build it a little bit more shapely like this. So we're talking about 4.1, so it's going to be 4. So we're going to be 13 by 4, essentially. All right, so now we have our width to our length. And so I'm just going to turn on symmetry. We know we're 13 and a quarter. And then what's 4 meters? That is going to be 5 meters. What are we talking here? That is 375. So we're going to go one wider. So let's go this wide here. So that there is 4 and a quarter by 13.25. So you see how I start to build things, and tankers can be pretty interesting how they're done. And so what I'm going to do here is put a center block right. Can't even find the center. There's right there. Now this is, so tankers, one of the points of a tanker is it is more efficient to make fewer trips with larger quantities of oil. And you'll see this, how enormously wide and flat-fronted these tankers are, because at the end of the day, you think every time you have to haul hoses up off the deck and connect them to the oil platform, that's wasted time. That's time that's not making you any revenue. Ideally, you want to reduce the amount of filling time. You want to reduce the amount of moving hoses, and you either want to be traveling there empty to filling, or traveling back and then emptying. And so it might sound like a good idea, which, be my guest, make a hydrofoil that goes 100 knots and, carries 10 liters of oil. Well, guess what? You're going to have to do 20 trips. It's actually tends to be better to make fewer trips, uh, with a higher quantity. That there's a reason why they do things they do. They do things the way they do IRL. In real life, what do? They tend to do fewer trips of larger quantities of oil. That tends to be what they do. If I could flip this the right way. Okay, good. And so I'm going to, we'll see how I can shape this if I'm liking this. So they're going to be pretty flat fronted. And so that's kind of what I'm doing here is I'm trying to see how flat fronted I want this. And so you'll notice that these ships tend to be very square. There's just really no getting around that. They tend to be very square, these tankers. I really don't like the fours, though. That's the issue here. All right, so let's get rid of this. Let's go to wedges here, 2x wedges. So I'm just trying to shape out the bow here. All right. All right, so this is going to be pretty square. And you saw that boat, the reference material that I showed you was pretty square. It was not, it had a very square nose, bow on it. It was not very shapely. And this is pretty normal. I could bring up a bunch of pictures of oil tankers, but I don't want to derail this too much. So it should be pretty flat. It doesn't need to be ultra curvy. Speed is not, your friend here. Quantity, capacity is going to be your friend here. All right, it doesn't have to be super shapely. If you want it to be great, it doesn't have to be. At the end of the day, the whole point of this is to make a barge that can carry a good capacity. So, eventually the rule set will be set. I would say go by the actual rule set that I put in there. But we'll go through the final rules. But this is going to be graded on a number of things. One is capacity. All right. I might not even put speed in there. At the end of the day, you want capacity. Now, one of the reasons why I'm considering a speed element, I haven't decided yet. And again, always consult final rules. I had to disqualify somebody from last time. I hate disqualifying people. And the person did not read. That was the whole point of the challenge, is what they didn't follow. And so, especially, often people were always trying to skirt the rules in a lot of these other challenges from other, other discords. And I always found that silly. Is follow the rules. There's following the letter of the law, and there's following the spirit of the law. And I tend to think that it's nice to follow the spirit of the challenge. And so the spirit of the challenge here is to, it was like you had a lot of these build challenges where people were building flying, it's supposed to be a beginner rescue boat, and they would make it fly. And that's not following the spirit of the challenge, and I'm happy to disqualify those types of things. If you're cheating, but technically by the little minutia of the law, you're, you're passing, dude, it's not going to pass well with me. You need to understand that there's a reason why it's here. And if you're trying to skirt the rules to try to be cute, it's not, one of the reasons why I'm happy to do things like that disqualification is it's not fair to the other people who followed the rules. And that used to drive me nuts in a lot of the challenges. You had a lot of people following the rules who had some ideas that they were really great, but they didn't do it because it wasn't following the rules. And then somebody comes by and essentially cheats. And so I'm very much against that. So, speed is not going to be the key here. This is going to be a beginner challenge. Now, one of the things is I'm going to probably make the amount of money around 50,000. Now, you start with 20,000. And so I didn't want to make it, 20 grand. I wanted to make it 50. And part of the reason is this. Generally, a tanker is not going to be your first vehicle in a career game, and the reason is pretty simple: is that you need to be able to purchase the commodity that you're trading, and so whether it be oil, or diesel, which tends to be the cheapest, you have to put up a lot of money. And so not only do you have to have 50 grand for the vessel, but you're going to need to have all that cash to be able to buy the goods. And so sometimes it makes, people like, oh, well, why aren't you trading jet fuel? Jet fuel is the best. First of all, best is not really how I put it, but jet fuel, you have to make an enormous financial investment to get enough jet fuel to move. It's actually so you might be able to fill your vessel. Let's say your vessel has 10,000 liter capacity. It might be better for you to fill your vessel full of oil and go do the mission, then or go do the trade, than to put 10% of the capacity with jet fuel and go do it. And so sometimes it's better to buy the cheaper commodity and fill it than it is to have the larger, essentially if you're going to fill 10% of your capacity, you need to make greater than 10% in profit margin, or else it's better to do um, the lower profit commodity at greater quantity, essentially. All right, so I'm just building up the rail. Again, mine's going to be super square. Again, you guys, I'm going to do about 4 weeks on this challenge. You guys are going to have a lot more time than I'm putting into this. I'm kind of doing this quickly. You guys are definitely going to have more time to this, so I hope yours. I hope your guys' and it probably will be much more, um, shapely and cooler than mine. But I'm just kind of doing this as an example, and I want to show some basics of the fundamentals of these tankers. I've built quite a few tankers in game, learned a lot. I've also done a lot of research on real tankers, and so that's why I'm kind of, especially on this one, I'm choosing to kind of come along and show you guys some tips and tricks. And again, this is going to show to me, like I've already actually started this a couple times and built some things. And so one of the reasons I'm doing this again is I'm going to actually build something to see if the rules that I make are possible. Like I was saying with other people's challenges, they were not building the things, they were having the community build. And lo and behold, they were not possible, or they were difficult, or it was very challenging to make it fit within their rule set because they didn't know if the rules are going to work. And so I want to actually take the time and make sure my rules are going to work. It's not fair to you guys if I give you an impossible challenge. So I want to make sure that the challenge is possible. I want to make sure that this isn't going to need 8 weeks and it's 4. I want to make sure that if it's going to only take, a day, that's the amount of time. So that tends to be why I also kind of build in parallel. So the first challenge, I built something, and then I did the Captain's Flight School series, and part of that was, can I put together a vehicle with these rule sets? And so I actually, some of the rules, I said, well, this is going to be challenging to the point of not fun, and I changed some of the rules before it even started because I went and I tested it. And so that's something that I wished that some of the other communities had done previously, and so I do this to try to improve on what I saw as some shortfalls, some shortcomings on some of the other challenges. So now people will talk about how in Stormworks vehicles are very tall and they have a lot underwater because of the decreased buoyancy, and that's true. But this is also something you see in tankers, especially oil tankers. They tend to have a lot underwater, and I'll bring up a picture here in a second. I'm going to try to get a little bit built here, and then I will kind of show you guys some stuff from tankers that I've seen. So I'm just going to keep building, and then I'll show you why I'm doing some of the things I'm doing. I really want to get to kind of the minutia of how to make ballast systems and, how that kind of interacts with tankers, because that can be very it can be tricky. And so instead of, I don't want these challenges to frustrate people. I want them to take people out of their comfort zone. Somebody who's never built a tanker before to build a tanker. One of the things, I'm contemplating making it modular engines only. One of the reasons I like to make people use modular engines is I see constantly, oh, I've never touched modular engines. Oh, modular engines are so hard. Well, guess what? I put out a couple modular engine tutorials now to help people. The reason I make these tutorials is try to demystify some of this stuff. And so you can grab one of my tutorials and you can see exactly how to do some of these things, and that's why I do it. Is I do it so that, hopefully to demystify some of this and get people in there. You know, I think these challenges are at their best when they take you out of your comfort zone where you said, "Oh, I'm not comfortable using a modular engine. I think I'm going to skip this one." And then the person who said, "I think I'm going to skip this one because I'm not comfortable with modular engines," well, guess what? They get some help in the discussions. Maybe they look at one of my tutorials or somebody else's tutorial, and then they come out with a great vehicle. And before they were afraid to touch modular engines, and now they know how. And whether they ever use them again is up to them. But they learned something new, and I think that is one of the great things with these challenges. I used to do challenges all the time, and for example, the first ground vehicle I ever made was for a challenge, and I had never made a ground vehicle before, and it was for a challenge, and so it was something that I thought was going to be very difficult, and there were some elements of it that were difficult for me, but guess what? Tried it out and got pretty good at making ground vehicles, and it made me better as a builder. It took some of the things that I said, "Oh, I'm never going to be able to do this." Like, I would love a Lua challenge from somebody. I am terrible at Lua, and the only way I'm going to ever get better at Lua is by practicing. And so sometimes, if I'm just building, I'm not going to go make a ton of Lua because I don't want to spend the time doing it. But if I have a challenge and there's a reason for me to go make something with Lua, that's when I'm saying, "Hey, you know what? I might participate in this challenge and I'll do this Lua challenge." And I don't care if I win or not. It's a good challenge. And so if somebody came up with a Lua challenge, that'd be awesome because guess what? It gives me a reason to get out of my comfort zone. Lua is out of my comfort zone right now. And so to have a challenge where somebody says, "Hey, here's a Lua challenge," and I have to get out of my comfort zone, that is awesome to me. All right, so now this is looking super duper fat underneath. But let's go ahead. I'll probably trim it a little bit, but let's go ahead and I'm actually going to show you some tankers and show you how that's not actually all that unrealistic. All right, so here are some oil tankers, and so let's look at some stuff on these. And so let me open this image in a new tab here. We'll zoom way in. All right, so look at the markings on this oil tanker. So the black section here, the painted black section, and where the red anti-fouling, it tends to be special paint used to try to keep the corrosion from the ocean from happening. So that tends to be why they're that color, is that the anti-fouling paint. And so when this is full of oil and it's going across the ocean, it tends to have the black line on the water. Now look at this thing. Look at how thin the black section is. Even if we account for the white where the piping and the catwalks are, the white and black section put together does not even equal the red section. Now there's even more underwater. Look, we can't even see the propeller. There's still a propeller underwater. Like 3/4 of this vehicle, it's like an iceberg. 3/4 of this sucker is underwater. I would say it probably goes down to here. So you notice that on an oil tanker, it has that much in, and why? An oil tanker is not a speedboat. So again, if you make one that goes 100 knots, you're not impressing me because that's not the goal of this. The goal is to make a good quality tanker where you can go out in one trip, you can fill it up with, say your base is empty, go fill up with diesel. You can drive it back to your base, and you can put a ton of diesel into your pumps. And then you can go do your career game, or you can go do some missions, or whatever you want to do. So there's a big ass propeller under here, and you can't see it. So much of this vehicle is underwater. So my vehicle looks ridiculous that much of it is underwater. Well, guess what? That's actually pretty realistic for an oil tanker. So how does an oil tanker work? Well, the oil tanker, as you can see, it's sitting up very high in the water, and likely this is going either from the docks or it's going to the docks. And so you think about the draft, and the draft is how much of this vessel is underwater. And so if, say, it's drafting, oh my God, this thing probably drafts, I don't know, 30 meters maybe? I'm guessing, but that's probably 30 meters underwater when this is on the waterline. So you might go in a port and there's only 3 meters of draft. And so if this sucker is drafting 30 meters, well, it needs to rise up out of the water. And how does it rise and lower? Well, it does that with ballast water, and it does it with its commodities that it's carrying. So if it's carrying oil, right? If this sucker's full of oil, it's going to be sitting on that black line. Now, it might be able to come up a little bit, but likely it's going to have to go into a deep port to drain off the oil. And they do that. They put the pumps pretty far out there because they don't want you to have to reduce the carry capacity in order to get into the docks. And so, but when you're coming into park, say, for service maintenance, if you drain all of your oil out and you drain all of your ballast water out, you'll see how high this sits. All right. And so one of the reasons you want to sit lower in the water is, let's say this went out into the ocean with really rough seas, it would probably roll over. All right. Center of gravity is probably somewhere just under the water line right here. Well, you don't want your center of gravity above where the water is. That gives you a greater likelihood of rolling over. Same thing in game. And so as you sink the vessel down and you get that center of gravity under the water, if the center of gravity is under the water, the likelihood you roll over is very slim. And so this is controlled with ballast water. When say you're leaving port and you're going to go out to the oil platform and fill with commodities, same in game, what you actually want to do with your tanker is you want to fill it with water, ballast water, into your ballast tanks, sink it down to get that center of gravity below the level of water, and now you're stable. So let's say you start rocking and rolling in the waves. You're less likely to tip over. You're more stable. Think of it as if you did a nice squat stance and you have somebody try to push you over, it's going to be unlikely. Now, let's say you stand up with your feet together, very tall, and somebody pushes you, it's much more likely you tip over. Your center of gravity is high. Get that center of gravity low, get nice and wide stance, you're less likely to tip over. Same thing with boats. All right, so let's look at another picture. All right, so here's another image. Look at the width of this thing. Look at how flat the front is. Again, this is not meant to be a speedboat. Momentum is key with tankers. All right, slow and steady wins the race. The more oil you can take and the fewer trips you can take, the better. As you can see, it's at around the water line there. This is pushing some water away. That's why, you can see a little bit of red there, but it's probably sitting pretty close to the water line. And so this is a big flat hulking ship. It doesn't matter if it's only going 6 knots if it's carrying a million, gallons of oil. It doesn't matter if it's going slow because it's better to go, let's say it carried half the capacity but went twice the speed, it's less efficient. It's more efficient for a number of reasons. One, if it's going twice the speed, yeah, you could say you're paying less in wages, but guess what? The fill time, even if the fill time is half because you have half the oil quantity, let's talk about in game. You're still going to have to take your hoses, go up to the oil platform or to the diesel platform and hook them up. That's all wasted time. The fewer times you can do that, the better. The amount of time you have to go up and hook it to drain it at your base is going to be less. And so this is all wasted time. And so wasted time is not good. So I'm going to come up with some sort of formula. I might not, what I'll probably do is, let's say I'll set the wind to, I don't know, say 20% wind, maybe more, but let's say 50% wind. I want it to be a little bit challenging. So say 50% wind, and we'll go probably, I'm thinking something towards the effect of, I have a couple, I have to look at my saves, but essentially I might go from, I'm probably not going to go the whole way. It would take me forever. I might run them, I might not. But what we'll do is we'll go from, say, Sawyer South, which has I don't know. I'll try to figure out. I'm going to probably get a save where I have a seed, where I have a pump out close to a pump in. And I'm not going to really run it. What I'll probably do is end up putting water in your tanks to simulate that. See how it's riding with water, with no water. Take it back and forth. The first challenge took me, it was like 6 hours of video, something like that, and a lot more time to edit. So that's a lot of time commitment. So I'll probably do a lot of simulated testing, fill it with water, see how it performs, drop the water ballast out, see how it performs. I'll show you how to do some auto ballast tanks here, but I'll play with that so you can see how flat and square this is. Again, the amount of commodity is king. Let's go into ballast tanks. Right, so let's look at some of these ballast tanks. So there were some new laws passed after a bunch of really bad oil spills. This is actually this is an oil tanker accident. PDF here is what I'm looking at. Let me zoom in all the way so you can see it a little bit better. And so, this is all about oil spills. And so they changed the regulations for this. And so one of the things they did was you could see the number of accidents. They had really bad oil spills. When I was growing up, it was the Exxon Valdez. And so if you look here, they changed the way it did. So you used to have a single hull. And so as you can see, if the oil is sitting against the hull, if you pierce it with a rock, right, that oil spills right out in the water. Now, if you make a void slash ballast area, if you pierce the outer hull, all you do is you pierce into the void. And so you're either filling that void with water, which is generally also your ballast tank. You're not going to be spilling anything out. So the worst case, you're spilling ballast water out, which isn't a big deal. Or you're just, putting water into your void. And so let's look at this. So you have segregated ballast tanks. Now, these are U-shaped ballast tanks. As you see, it makes a U shape. And so this tends to be also one of the best ways to do it in games. So what happens is when you go out there, remember, you want your water line near the water line. That gives you the best stability. And so if you fill this U-shaped ballast with water on your trip out there, it's going to put you lower in the water. It's going to give you good stability. You're less likely to roll over. You notice how square these ships are as well, right? That helps with stability. It also helps with adding increased commodity in there. And so this U-shaped ballast will often be filled with water to help bring the vessel lower in the water. And then as you add oil in there, or diesel or whatever, as you add that in there, the water is pumped out. So then now this is full of air, gives you buoyancy, same in game. And then you have nice full tanks here. So that's how we're going to be building our tanks, with a nice U-shaped ballast. All right, so let's look back at this. So you notice that even though this seems super weird that it's so fat underneath, that's actually realistic. All right, we have a realistic length to beam ratio. Looks like a kind of a funky square thing, but it's pretty realistic. So keep in mind some of these things, right? That you might think these are super weird looking, but in real life, this is how they build tankers. Again, quantity is king. They want to put as much oil in there as possible, right? This isn't supposed to be, this isn't a beautiful yacht. This is supposed to be a work vessel. You notice how ugly sometimes things that do work are, and the reason they're so ugly is they have a job to do. It doesn't really matter what they look like. What it matters is, are they able to do their job? And so the most important thing with these types of vessels is often, can they do their job? All right, so we have to start working on a transom here. And so the transom where the propeller is going to sit. And so one of the things we can do here is, I've got this pretty close to the bottom here. Let's go ahead and drop this. So let's say 2. So that's as low as I can get. So let's grab some props. And actually probably want them sitting a little closer together. So let's go ahead and we'll fill that in. And I'm going to go with some large propellers for mine. You can put 1 in there if you want. You can do 2, whatever you want to do. I might do 1. A lot of the tankers have 1. I don't know. It's going to be easier with 2. Can make it so I don't have too much prop noise. So let's say like that. All right, now what I'm going to do is that's about as low as I can get. And so we'll see where this is sitting. Let's go ahead and bring in some. So this is going to sit about there. So what we want to do is when this is empty of ballast and it's sitting up high, we want the propellers submerged, especially for in-game reasons. So probably there is about as high as I want it to sit. So that's pretty good for the propellers. So that's going to work if the propellers are in like that. And then I generally do about 2 blocks. So I'd say here at the highest for the water line, and that's so that we don't get that water effect on top of the deck. All right, it's good. So that kind of shows me where I can go with this. And that's going to help me start to build my transom. So my transom is the underwater portion, and so I'm going to cut it right, let's say there. All right, so this is going to be my transom, and so I'm going to just cut into here and start working on the stern here. Yep. So I kind of have where my stern should be kind of molded in my head here. Again, you can kind of see my build strategy here, and I'm actually quite interested in how everyone else's build strategies work. All right, so there is going to be the area, and so I'm going to start working this up. And I'll start doing some 1x4 pyramids, and we'll join this together. So this is going to be the bottom of the transom here. So what I'll tend to do is I'll just throw some square in here for now, and that'll probably change. And then I know it definitely will change, but take some 1x4s here. Again, don't be afraid this being too square and too blocky. Remember from the oil tanker pictures that I sent you that is actually how they are. They're pretty square and blocky. And a lot of it's going to be sitting underwater. The point of this ship is to do its job. The point of this is to be a work vessel. You notice how ugly work vessels look. Again, they don't need to look like yachts. Again, at the end of the day, it's a work vessel. And so part of this, part of a lot of my challenges is to get people out of their comfort zones. And part of getting out of your comfort zone for a lot of people is to go play career. Listen, you don't enjoy career, that's fine. But a lot of people, they don't find enjoyment in career not because they wouldn't, but because, they don't see that, yep, you can actually go make a bunch of money. People will complain about how little you make for rescues. And then they go try playing in a different way where they are not doing rescues, they're doing something else like commodities trade, and they say, hey, I actually really enjoy doing commodities trading, or commodities trading gives me the amount of money that I can go build some other vehicles and enjoy those in career. So again, it's up to you however you like to play the game, but often you'll find people enjoy the game more than they initially thought they would when they actually get out of their comfort zone and try some things. All right, so I'm just going to kind of put this together here. I might try to join that a little bit. Let's join this a little bit, see what I can do here. So let's do 1x4s here, 1x2s rather. It's again, it's up to you however you like to play, but it's always great, I think, to get out of your comfort zone, try something different, try something new, see if you like it. You might often be surprised. I was very burned out on the game. One of my favorite vehicles to use and build in game are tugboats. And so I got away from the water for too long, and it burned me out. I was really looking forward to and really started enjoying the game again when I got back to the career build series and building a tugboat. It slowed the gameplay down. It gave me a little bit more of a deliberate reason to play, where before it was very rush and planes and going here fast, and slowing down actually brought a lot of the joy of the game back to me. Was taking some deliberate time and trying to slow it down and really enjoying it. You might find that with yourself. You may or may not realize that you enjoy a little bit of slower gameplay, and you may not. But for me, that slow gameplay, I really enjoyed getting back to it. And all right, so there we go. We have a little bit of a kind of a nice sculpted transom in there. And let's go ahead and let's put the props. So that's a good distance between them. I'm going to do it standard. It's not going to have azipods or anything funky like that. So I'm going to try to get these probably as high as I can get them. Probably there, maybe. That's looking pretty good there. All right, so there are a number of factors in game that you have to consider for stability and everything else. We'll get into that. Again, the reason why I'm building alongside here and kind of, not that there's a tutorial, but kind of a guide is just to kind of show people. Let me just do some things here. To kind of show people some of the things you can do for stability. I noticed did some reviews on some builds and people had some stability issues, and so I thought it'd be interesting and helpful to some people to see how to work on some stability stuff. I'm trying to decide if I want to put some bracing in on these or not. Sometimes you have braced rudders, sometimes you don't. I think people often overestimate how much rudder they need. Remember, there's an oil tanker. There's even they often use it as an analogy of, it's like trying to turn an oil tanker, and that was an expression people often used, and the reason they were using it was because an oil tanker takes a long time and a lot of planning to turn, and because it's just incredibly massive, and that's why they go out and they have tugboats do braking operations, which are to try to help slow down, to brake, to reduce the speed of these large vessels, is because it takes a very long time to get them slowed down. And so, you know what? I don't need this thing to turn on a dime. The more it acts like a sports car, the less I think it does not fit the spirit of the build. Are you going to lose a lot of points? No, but you might lose some points if this thing works like a sports car. If it behaves like an oil tanker, if I can suspend disbelief and forget that I'm in game and think I'm operating a real oil tanker, that's peak gaming for me. You probably noticed that I tend to like a little bit more of a simulator gameplay. And again, this will have the same type of grading as other ones. You'll have your points, you'll have your captain's favorite, and you'll have your community favorite. And so you might, I often didn't care. For example, I don't like dropping names too much. I used to do the New Jersey challenges, and I enjoyed them a lot. But I cared less about what Jersey thought about my builds than what the community thought. And so Jersey's, he used to get a lot of submissions. And so because he got so many submissions, he had to have the community vote on which ones they wanted to get into the finals. And so, he had people vote, and then the top 10 would actually get in the videos. And so, I was afraid at some point I'd have to do that just because if the challenge got so popular, like the first one had a lot of submissions. It was like 6 hours of videos I had to put out, but, I enjoyed doing it. But, I really didn't care too much about Jersey's thoughts on my build. What I cared about was the community voting mine in the top 10. That's what I cared about. I cared more about my peers than Jersey. And it was nothing against him. It was just I cared about what everybody else thought more than, what he thought about my build. And so that's kind of, so that's why I do the 3 ways to win, is you might not care my opinion of your build at all, and that's fine. You might care about what the community thinks about your build. And so that's why I do that, is it gives you an opportunity that, hey, you don't care what I think about your build? Great. You care about what the community thinks about your build, you can build to them. You can build for them instead of building for me. And so that's why I add those options to win through, community intervention as well. All right, so we have the hull here. And you notice it's a square doggy, and it's square for a very important reason. Its job is to move oil. Its job is not to be a sports car. All right, so first thing, we were pretty sealed up here. We finally got to the sealing stage. Let's drop this sucker in the water. And so this is going to be more of the tutorial segment of this. I'm going to I might record this as partly stability here as well. A lot of people have been having stability issues and having some questions. All right, so notice where it sits in the water. All right, now I do this on purpose. I build my builds to be very buoyant to start with. And the reason I do this, you notice the propellers are still in the water, which is nice. I build things to be overly buoyant to start with because you can always, it's very easy to add mass. Let's put it that way. You can add weight blocks, you can add battle cannon parts. You're going to add a bunch of mass when you add engines, when you add superstructure. You are going to add a lot of mass to it. Mass is easy to add, buoyancy is challenging to add. So you notice how this sucker is super duper buoyant. It's sitting up very high in the water. If we start with a lot of buoyancy, then we can easily take it away by adding mass. It's very challenging to add buoyancy later. It is very easy to delete mass later. And so one of the things I do is, let's test it out right here. So let's see, so like I said, our oil tanker is going to sit we're going to try to sit our oil tanker lower in the water. Well, it's very easy for me to add these weight blocks. So this is one of the things I talked about this when in the career build series when I was building my tugboat is I start by adding a lot of weight blocks. And so now watch when I put it in the water. All right? You see how that's very easy for me to take away all that buoyancy. That's a lot of weight. I'm going to have to swim down to it. It's too low. All right. So let's see its mass. So currently it weighs 10,009. So 10,009 sinks this like a stone. I wish I had recorded it before let's delete them all out and let's see the difference. It won't take long. All right, so 10.9 is with all of these weight blocks, and let's take the weight blocks out. All right, so 10.9 is full of weight blocks to, say, 5. So you're talking 8,000, was that 8,400? So 8,400 sinks it. Let's put in some weight blocks and see how much weight we can put in this till we figure out where it sits right at the water line where we want it. So that was 2.5 is just the hull. So just the hull is 2.5. That is now 10.6. Probably sinks like a stone. Yep. Okay. So let's see. Oh, come on. I hated how it goes to the bottom and I have to swim to get it. All right. And so let's go ahead and let's delete out some block here. So I'm going to delete this top stack. So that goes from, that was like 10.6 to 8. Will she float? She will not. Let me double check, make sure this does not have a hole in it too. It shouldn't. I don't think I introduced a hole, but I want to just double. Yep, I did. I introduced a hole. Okay. So that would do it every day of the week is introducing a hole. I accidentally introduced a hole here. I thought that shouldn't be that probably shouldn't be sinking, but it was. All right, that's in there. All right, so let's try this at 7. I was gonna say it should float at this weight. All right, so notice it's just barely floating. Let me get in there. I want to double check there's no water in here. All right, no water in here. So as you can see, this is going to give me some notion of how much mass I can add in there and where. All right, so at about 7,900, it's mostly unbalanced. It's not really sinking all that much. Let's take out, so now we're at 7.1. So I took 800 mostly out of the stern. So that is hauling nicely. That's about as low in the water as I want this to sit. And I actually want to go forward a little bit with it. All right, so I actually want to go forward in the bow with a little bit of this mass. And so let's go, let's see, where are we at here? Why didn't it let me double drag? That's 7.6. Let's see how that's weighing. All right, so notice that's probably absolutely maximum capacity right there. You notice, like the oil tanker, we have a lot of tanker sitting underwater. That's fine. I have to fix the bow in here. I screwed the bow up there somehow. I need to fix that. But as you can see, we have a good bit of mass we can take. So that's 7.6. So 7.6 is probably our maximum mass. So these are good things to know. So I tend to go through this. You know, people are often, first thing they'll do is they'll go on and they'll say, you know, physics of the game sucks. Sorry, I'm gonna throw some shade. How about that? And they don't take the step to say, hey, maybe I didn't build it right, or hey, maybe I don't know as much about physics as I thought I did. And I do this all the time. You know, I say to myself, oh, maybe I built it wrong. Maybe I didn't. You know, I don't know as much about physics as I think I do. And so this is helpful to at first say, you know what, maybe it's not the game, maybe it's me. Now sometimes it is the game. Sometimes it's not. All right, so 7.6. So I'm going to write these numbers down. And I often, you know what, I have pen and paper with me all the time. I'll put them on Google Drives. I move all around how I'm doing these. So about, was that 7,600 was probably about max. So I'll write that as my max. And about 2,500 is my min. So my hull weighs 2,500. My maximum is 7,600. And so we're talking about 50, with that 5,100 mass is about what I'm going to be able to add. And so we think about things we're going to add. So you can do this if you want. You can say, let's add some lumps in here. So symmetry's on. Let's add some lumps. So let's say that. So what's that? That weighs about, oh, I don't know. That was about 49, yeah, about 490 mass. So if we put that in there, that's our, let's say that's about our engines. So that's going to be our engines there, right? And so let's look at our center of gravity as well. So let's start getting into stability and hydrodynamics and all this stuff and buoyancy and mass and all that stuff. So one thing I often do is I'll put a center of gravity marker on there. So that's where my center of gravity is with engines in. All right, it's right there. Let me fix this bow really quick because this could cause me issues later. It's a little bit hokey with these diamonds here. Can I cut it in and not cause myself problems? Not really. Let's try something. I want to reform this shape just really quick here. Okay, that's there. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that this was a little bit weirded out here. Let's change this little, and I'm doing it now because this will change the dynamics of it. So let's go pyramid. Let's go 2x2s. Okay. And so let's go like this here. And I'm just going to fix the shaping here that I had on my bow. My bow is a little bit hokey and a little bit funky. All right, and then what I'll do is I'll grab, I think I have a 2x there, 2x4 right here. Again, they'll attach and they'll mate fine. Again, that's 4, that's 2. Just count them out. A lot of people struggle with that. If you just count out the blocks, we are missing pyramid blocks, but as you can see, that will mate up fine. You just have to count the blocks out. Like that's what I mean here, 2x4, and that will tell you right off the bat you need a 2x4 inverse pyramid, and this mates up pretty quickly. So that was an easy fix. I should have a 2 right there. So that was just an oversight by my part. I didn't really look at it right. So I'm going to check this again, just make sure that it should float fine. There's going to be no floatage issues there. All right, perfect. So let's go back in. I want to check that dynamics of this. So you notice where the center of gravity is there. So the closer we can get the mass in there. Now, we don't get an indication of center of buoyancy. Now, we should be able to make some educated guesses of where center of buoyancy is. So I'm just going to use the green block. Center of buoyancy is there. Probably not that far. Let's say, center of gravity is, center of buoyancy is going to be there. Let's make that a blue. Blue center of buoyancy there. So I'm going to say my center of gravity is here, my center of buoyancy is here. Ideally, I want my center of gravity at my center of buoyancy. All right. And so one of the ways we can test this, let's just grab a quick tilt sensor. Let's go stick it in there. And so I'm just going to make it pink for us right here. And so I'm going to look at where my center of grav is, which is my center of mass, which is that. And let's look. And one of the ways we can tell is look at the angle, right? You notice it's positive, it's tilting up. We can see it doing it, right? So we know that the center of buoyancy is probably ahead of the center of gravity. Let's fix it. All right. So we can do it a couple ways, right? Some basics physics stuff here. So here's our center of our CG, center of gravity right there. I'm going to build up to the CG right there. Now, if I put some weight here, right, you notice it drags it down, right? That's starting to move it forward to match my center of buoyancy. There's a couple things I can do. I can put a ton of weight here, and I can start to drag that forward. And eventually, if I put enough mass right here, it will start dragging it forward, dragging it forward. Now, the other thing I can do, which is a little bit risky, is, right, torque. There's something known as torque, right? If I add a long arm, the longer the arm, right? So think of it like you have a very long, oh my God, why is this not dragging the way I want to? All right, we're just going to do this. The longer the arm, right, that being a torque, a physics term, right, the lever arm, right, it's the lever arm, right, so the longer the arm on a torque wrench, right, how long the handle is of a torque wrench, think of it that way, the more torque you're applying, right? So if I put a very long lever here, right? So that's a long lever, right? So think of your center of gravity as where your ship, where the nut is that you're trying to turn with your torque wrench, right? I have to do a lot of force, i.e. a lot of those weight blocks close to the center of gravity to drag it forward. Or I could go like this. And so I could add it here, and you'll notice we will get more play by moving it like this. And so you don't have to put it on an arm like this. This is just to kind of demonstrate to you that the further you put it forward, the more effect it's going to have because it has this longer lever arm, this longer torque arm. All right, now let's go put it in the water. And that is sitting much better. Let's test it. Let's check it here. All right. And so by putting that mass up front, we're going to be doing a greater service to ourselves. The further we can get that forward, the less mass we're going to have to put. So if we wanted to move that center of gravity towards the center of buoyancy, we're going to have to put a ton of mass if it's close. We can put a tiny bit of mass if it's back here. So when I'm doing my my ballasting here, so let's go like this. Let's go like that. Let's go like this. Let's go like that. So let's see if I can get this. I want to set this so that the tilt center is as level as possible. And so by putting it as low as I can get it, that keeps my center of gravity nice and low. But it's also, you can see it was like it was like going up to the next digit up 1. That's sitting much flatter now. And so by putting it low and as far forward as I can get it, I'm actually needing fewer blocks. And so this is just some quick balancing essentially. Now, I'm going to do a bunch of things. I'm adding engines in the back. I'm adding superstructure in the back. I'm going to probably be adding some pumps somewhere in there. I don't know where, but so I'm not going to get into actually putting those weight blocks. But let's look at the side of this right now, and let's look at my center of buoyancy. Let's look at my center of gravity, and look at the water. They're flat. All right, so this is giving me good stability right off the bat. Now, as I added that center of gravity, let's look at in the editor and see where it went. Aha. So this was my guess where the center of buoyancy is. Look where my center of gravity is now. So my guess was 1 block off. That's really where the center of buoyancy is. And that's really where the center of gravity is now. So you notice I have them matched now. This is going to give me stability. All right, so a lot of people have this issue with stability. Again, if you can kind of guess where your center of buoyancy is and try to get your center of gravity there, what do we notice? Using a tilt sensor, that's pretty damn good. And so now that's going to tell us that's pretty good. Now, why is this like this? Well, look, we have this big bulbous front on here, full of air, lots of buoyancy. We have this slope in the back. This has a lot less air than the front. We also put some mass in there, some engines. Now, why do the engines sit so far forward? They sit forward because the closer we can get the engines to the center of gravity, the less likely they're going to cause us problems. All right. Where is our fuel going to go? Where do we want our fuel to actually fuel this tanker? We want them as close to the center of gravity as possible. We want them right here. So let's go ahead and let's knock in our fuel tanks. All right, so right here is going to be our center of gravity, our center of buoyancy, all that good jazz right here. And so I'm going to put in some fuel tanks. So let's go like this. Symmetry on it is good. And let's say, oh, I don't know. We don't need a ton of fuel with this. I will come up with a distance for you guys, but it doesn't have to be all that far. And so we're going to block in the fuel tanks. And there are your fuel tanks, okay? So I put them at center of gravity. Why? This is also something, again, most of my training is in aviation. You know, my degree is in aeronautical science. And so most of the stuff I know is airplanes. Airplanes are less forgiving than ground vehicles. They're a lot less forgiving than, you know, ocean vehicles are less forgiving than ground vehicles. And airplanes are less forgiving than ocean vehicles. So, you know, because they're less dynamic. And so, you know, the same physics applies to ships as with airplanes, you know, generally. It's fluid dynamics. You know, air is a fluid. Right, water is a fluid. It's fluid dynamics. All right, and so I have some experience in there. But so think of it this way: you're changing your mass, right? Fuel is something you're going to burn. You're going to burn fuel, right? As you burn fuel, you're losing its mass. Now, now remember we did that little torque arm conversation. We had a torque arm in the middle, right? The longer the arm of the torque wrench, right, the more effective this weight was. So the further I can get this weight, so let's say I could make it more effective by sticking it all in here, right up against this front wall. But the issue I would have is that it would also raise the center of gravity. I put it low here. I sacrifice some of my distance forward to try to make sure I keep it low. I could probably actually, let's do this really quick. Let's see how this behaves. I'm darting around, I know, guys. Let me try not to dart around with my thoughts too much, but they do that. So let's do this instead. Let's go ahead and let's go zing zing. And let's go like this, let's go like that, and let's go like that. Now, that's going to raise my center of gravity up a little bit. I can change that by putting some mass right here. So if I need to add any extraneous mass, it's going right here in the center of gravity. All right, but I put this in for balancing. So this is in for balancing. Now let's check it again. Center of gravity, oh my God, it's right where it's supposed to be. All right, I moved it using that torque arm. So the same physics applies. The further away it is, the more of effect it's going to have. So think of it this way, right? You take a gallon jug of water. You hold it close to your chest. It's easy to hold. You can hold it up against your chest with one arm for a long time, right? You put it right up against your chest. You use your arm to hold it. You can hold that jug of water for a very long time. Now, grab the handle of that gallon jug of water, put it out as far as you can on your arm, and hold it out there. See how long you can hold that, right? You can hold it a lot less because the lever arm is longer, the mass, the force of the jug of water is going to be more. All right, and so one of the things people have problems with in their builds is if, let's say we put our fuel tank in the front, as the fuel burns, what's going to happen? The bow is going to start coming up. All right, now if the fuel's in the center, right at the center of gravity, as the fuel burns, right, we get rid of our fuel, it's going to go straight up. It's not going to tip the boat, and that's part of our stability. Put your fuel at the center of gravity. Planes do this, right? The center of gravity needs to be at the center of lift, right? Center of lift is somewhere around the middle of the wing. It depends, but somewhere around the middle of the wing. That's going to give you the center of lift. So if you drew a line through your wings where the center of lift was, and you mark it on the cabin, you want your center of gravity to be right around your center of lift. And we actually had flight envelope issues where sometimes we'd have to move passengers because the center of gravity was off. And so you'd have to move a passenger from the front to the back, and that would make sure the center of gravity was within the envelope so that it wasn't too far from the center of lift. In the boat, we have center of buoyancy. It's doing the same thing. And so we want to put our fuel there. In an airplane, your fuel is often in your wings. Why? That's where your center of lift is. So as you burn fuel, your center of gravity is staying where it should be. It's not moving forward or aft. If we put the airplane's fuel in the nose and it was balanced so that the center of gravity was at the center of lift, well, guess what? As you burn that fuel, your center of gravity is moving aftward, right, because it was in your nose. But your center of lift, your wings aren't moving. You'd have to have dynamic wings that move with it. And so that's often why people have these stability issues. And it also works with boats like this. You can have stability issues with your boats if you're not building them correctly. All right, so I just got rid of some extraneous blocks. So as we burn this fuel, we're going to go straight up. Okay, good. So that is in mind. So center of gravity is about at the center of buoyancy. Now that we kind of know this, again, we're going to make some changes. We're going to add superstructure. We're going to do things like that. But we're pretty good to start with here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to paint this. We'll get rid of that. So this is in line where we want it. Now we can start to plan our ballast tanks, and we can plan our commodity tanks, our fuel tanks that are going to carry our liquid commodity, essentially. All right, so let's start planning those. And so you notice when I showed you that diagram, they built U-shaped ballast, right? They were shaped like a U so that if a rock broke through, you weren't spilling oil. Well, this is also very helpful in game. We don't want this boat sitting up too high in the water. It's going to be super duper unstable, right? You'll see every time we go, like if I took this boat out in the water sitting this high, it's going to be super tippy. It's going to be miserable. We're going to go out in the waves. It's possible it will either roll over or it'll be listing back and forth. We want the boat to sit about where it's going to sit on the waterline, either empty of oil or full of ballast water. We want it to be the same. And so what we're going to do is U-shaped ballast. All right, and so let's start building that in. All right, now remember we only have a certain amount of mass we can take. So let's start by building these tanks. And so I'm going to go, all right, here's our central point. Let's build that there. All right, and I'm going to probably build to, I don't want to put too much water or commodity in the nose. I don't want to put too much in the bow. I don't want to put too much in the stern. So we're going to kind of count this out. Now our engines are going to start to be in the way a little bit. I could probably move these one block this way, so let's go ahead and I'm just kind of checking the distance I have on the engines. Again, I also want my engines low. I don't want them high. You know, you see people, if I built them up here, that would be a great use of space, but it would completely throw off the dynamics, right? The higher we go, the further out we go, the more likely that's going to cause stability issues. The closer we get them to center of gravity, the lower we get them, the better the boat's going to operate. So that's why I want them right here. All right, now let's go ahead and start building these tanks. Now remember, we can't carry a ton of weight. You saw we could go empty. We're 2,500. We could go to 7,600 probably at max. We don't want these tanks too huge, or else we're just not going to be able to carry commodity. All right, we're not going to be able to carry it. And so let's go ahead and let's do, let's say 1, 2, 3. What's that? 4. Let's say 4. I want to have a little bit of an engine room I can crawl around in there and work on the engines. Remember, we want this to be a usable vehicle. I don't like making these challenges where they're throwaways, where you just say like, okay, that was a cool challenge, and then you just delete them. You know, I want you to be able to use these a little bit and actually use them in your gameplay. You know, making goofy challenges, you know, sometimes it just makes people want to throw their build away after, which is fine if if you had fun with the challenge, great. It's okay to throw your build away, but it's also nice if you can still use that build and still have some utility for it. So I'm doing a lot of measuring here. Again, our center of gravity is right here. Our center of buoyancy is right here, so we can build equally and make this work. So we have 3 there, 3. What did I overbuild it there? What do you have? Right center pillar. It's on the center pillar. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's fine. This is going to be the wall. That's why I didn't build the wall yet. So notice this is equal here. All right, so now let's build our commodity tank in the center. Again, now you could pierce the wall and go into the fuel tank. That's fine. It's the commodity tank I don't want to pierce. And so we're going to build our U-shaped ballast. All right. And so let's go ahead to this tool, section plane. What is this one? Now look at the shape. I need to move this just a hair. Let's go. Look at the shape of that. That's our U-shaped ballast, right? It goes in a U. So we have our U-shaped ballast. We have our commodity tank in the middle, U-shaped ballast. Again, we're using the things we learned from real life in game, and it just makes it work. And that's one of the reasons why I like to do that, is it just makes it work right if we do it the way they do it in real life. Engineers have spent thousands and thousands of hours figuring this stuff out. Well, we can use all that knowledge they gained to our benefit. And so we'll connect to the sides of our ballast tanks there. So this is going to be water. All right. So this is all of our water. So water is going to go into the floor here. It's going to go into the walls. So it goes very high, but it also sits very low. So that's going to keep a nice center of gravity. And so we also have our commodity tank here. So first thing I'm going to do is we'll do a couple tests. So I'm going to grab a spawner. And we're going to stick this. And so the way I'm going to be testing this is because we can't spawn diesel anymore. I'm spawning seawater in there. So keep that in mind. So we're spawned with seawater now. All right. And you notice we're sitting a little bit bow heavy. All right, which is great. Remember, I threw a bunch of mass blocks in there. All right. This is one of the reasons I masked this out first. Watch how easy this is to fix. That's why I mass it first. Look how easy this is to fix. Fixed. I gotta actually probably add a couple more back. See how it's tipped to the stern a little bit? That's why I do that. That's why I put my mass in first. By massing it out, it's very easy to fix that. I don't remember. It's going to be hard for me to add ballast. right? We have plenty, or I'm sorry, it's going to be hard for me to add buoyancy. It's very easy for me to add ballast. Right now, we're ballasting, doing our main ballasting is going to be with water. Now, I see it's still sitting pretty high. I actually want this to sit lower in the water, probably to about the where the curve is on the transom. Let me actually set a water line. This is something I like to do in game all the time, is set a water line. You'll notice I do this a lot with my boats. I put a water line in there. I try to get it in there pretty early too. So let's go and stick a water line. So where do I want the water to stick? And so one of the things I tend to do is I want at least at the minimum 1 block below the I tend to want the water 2 blocks below the deck. And the reason is we get that effect in game that the water will look like it's inside of our boat when it's not. And so by making the water, which the water should be below the water line, there's the deck right there. So I tend to do two blocks below the water line. So, or two, let me try to speak the English language. I tend to like to make sure the water will be 2 blocks below the deck. Here's the deck, 1, 2. So the water is here, 2 blocks below. That's right where I want it. Okay, good, perfect. So as you can see, I've done this before. So, you start to get these fundamentals right. It makes it very easy to replicate some of these things. Okay, so there's my water line. So let's spawn it, see where we're sitting. This is going to tell me if I can add or I can't add more commodity. All right, good. So that's in there. Let's add some more little weight block things. And so we have some fake engines in here, right? That's fake mass. As I add engines, as I add cooling, as I add all these things, right, we're starting to get into the area of having some mass here. So what is that? That is simulating, right? That's where my controls are going to be. That's going to be my superstructure. So let me actually, I need to measure that. Let's see. That is about, so that's just under 4,800 there. That is 39. So we're adding, that's only 100 mass. So let's add 2 of those. Because I want to see what, I'm going to add in my my tower in there. My controls are going to be in there. Let's actually go, let's go like this. 2 forward, and let's cut out 2 in the back. And so this is where my cabin is going to be. My pilot house is going to be right there. So let's add those in there, right? And so as I build that structure up, I can get rid of this. So I'm just balancing my ship now. All right, now it's going to sit even further to the stern, as you can see. And what I'm trying to do is figure out how much water can I stick, how much commodity and how much ballast water I can stick in the sucker. So now we're putting that back. Trying to get this balanced. All right. The further I put that forward, the easier it's going to be to counteract all that mass I added. And so you'll see this a lot of times. People freak out that, oh my God, I added my superstructure and now it's not working, and they give up. And so this is kind of a good method to, by using weight blocks and getting in there and ballasting it, you can always delete some and move some and get it where it needs to be. All right, so now actually we're pretty good on the level. Look at the level. See, we're pretty good in the level. All right, so that is starting to get pretty good. We're too low, but we're pretty good level-wise. All right, so this is going to tell us how much commodity we can hold as well. We need all this air to be able to hold this bit of commodity here. So let's go ahead, and I want to do a test here. So let's grab we're going to grab a fluid meter here. I'm going to stick it right there, and then I want to dial. Let's go ahead and we'll grab the fluid level. We'll read that, spawn that in there. All right. And it will eventually stabilize, but this is about max here. So that's 7,000 liters of water going in there. So it doesn't look like a lot of space, but it is. All right, let's do this. I should have done this at the same time. It would have been wise, but I didn't. So let's, this is going to be, so that's water, ballast. Okay. And then I'm going to go grab another meter. And then let's measure how much commodity we can take, how much oil we can haul with this sucker. And I'm going to take the fluid capacity on this one, because I'm not going to fill it. I can't fill both tanks at once. I can fill one or the other, and that's how we set this up to work. All right, that can take 9,000 liters of oil, theoretically. We're going to probably have some issues hauling that much oil. Now, one thing we can do is we can move the superstructure further forward. The further we can move this superstructure here forward, the better we're going to be. We can also limit its mass to, okay, just checking what I moved the rudders last. Just check and make sure I need them. All right, so let's take this, let's move it forward. So let's move it, I don't know, there. By moving that forward, right, I don't need to delete as much. There we go. So see, now we are too heavy in the nose. So I don't know how much a bridge is gonna weigh for us, but probably not a lot. So let's cut out that, and let's see if moving that forward, I'm trying to rebalance this ship because I want to make sure. There we go. Look, we're getting close. See us? There we are. We're locked in. So see, we're now at the water line, and we're pretty well balanced. Let me check this tilt sensor. Notice the tilt sensor is almost at 0. We're holding 7,000 liters of ballast water, and we can hold 9437 of commodity. Let's go ahead and check our commodity tank. So we'll do this. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this spawner. We're going to cut that, and I'm just going to cut it so that I don't have to shut it off and stick it in here. All right, so now remember, all that water, I got rid of all the water. There's no water in there anymore, but there's going to be oil in here, simulated with water. So now we are holding 9,000 liters of oil, diesel, jet fuel, whatever you want to haul. So you can see now we're hauling that. All right, so my water quantity is probably too low. It's definitely too low. It's 7,000, and my oil is too high. So let's do this. Let's go ahead, and this one is currently showing me fluid level. I'm going to do capacity on both. All right, and now let's go ahead and try to equalize these. So one of these is lower than the other. So we don't hold enough water. We hold too much oil. All right, so I need to increase the amount of water. And so let's do this. Let's go ahead. Symmetry's on. Let's cut. And I have too much oil. You see how it's making me sit too low in the water? What's that? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Okay, I'm just counting them, make sure I have the count right. Let's go ahead and put that tank like that. Now this is going to increase our water capacity. It's going to decrease our oil capacity. I'm just using oil as kind of a catch-all for the liquid commodity. All right, so that, I haven't filled up my fuel tanks either. I need to do that. So that's 82 water, 78 oil. So that's probably pretty good there. All right, that is probably looking pretty good. And so the other thing we have to fill is we have to fill these fuel tanks. So let's go ahead and grab a couple spawners. These are actually going to be filled. I'm going to fill these with water as well. Fill these with seawater. That's going to be my fuel tanks. I need to be able to hold full fuel, right, when I go out. So I need to add that in. See how it's going to sit. Because this is going to tell me ultimately how much mass I can add on top of this and how much buoyancy I need. All right, so let's try to cut down our mass as much as possible here. So see if I can't cut out some more mass in the front. All right, because we're adding it here, so I don't need too much there. So right now our commodity tank is full, our ballast tank is empty. I just took out some ballasting weight. All right, so I'm curious how much superstructure I'm actually going to need mass-wise. So let's see. Let's cut a little bit of this. So I'm going to cut the first row. And this is all guidance. You know, as I add too much mass, as I add a bunch of superstructure mass, I'm going to have to worry about cutting out commodity. I don't want to cut out commodity. The more oil I have to lose, the less of a chance I have to make money or to just fill my base quicker. The more trips I'm going to have to take. So, you know, those who might be thinking of to make 100 knot fast hydrofoil could be all right, just because the game doesn't work right. But, you know, you can see how challenging it is, how much buoyancy, how much air volume I need in there to carry, 8,000 liters of, or what, yeah, just under 8,000 liters. So this is beautiful right now. This is looking pretty good. It's at the water line. It's pretty much level at the water line. You can see it's rocking back and forth, which means it's pivoting off its center of buoyancy. It has full fuel tanks at the moment. It has full ballast tanks. One thing I want to do here is really quick. So let's go ahead. I want to see how much fuel this holds, because that could be an area where if I don't need all this fuel, I'm not going to run it. So let's check it. So let's go in the fuel tanks here. Is that meter? Did I grab meters? I think I did. Yes. Okay. I'm just going to do the, instead of doing an addition here, we're just going to do this. So I'm going to do fluid capacity there. Fluid capacity there. Let's go ahead and I want to see how much fuel I hold to run my engines. Okay, so that's 2,400 liters. That's pretty good. That's going to be pretty good capacity. All right, I'm not going to have us go super far, but if you build your engines right, if you gear them right, you should have no problem. So this save is my Cap Air. This is my career build series map. Let's look at the map and see what I'll probably end up doing. So this here is the oil gantry. This is where you'd be buying your commodities. And you know what I'll probably do? This is what I'll do. This is going to be the challenge. All right, so you're gonna see, I have to worry about spawning this stuff too. Okay, so I'm gonna run it on this seed. If you want this seed, I'll give you the number. I'll put it in there. Seed is gonna be 192,837. Okay, 192,837. I'll put it up on the screen as well. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spawn from. I will test this sucker. Let me travel here really quick. Oh, that's a full-size base. Okay, that's full-size base. That's fine. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to spawn us from. Ooh, FJ Warner could be interesting too. I'm looking at distance here. I want as short a distance. I have to test all of this. So, imagine I'm testing all of your boats, how long it's going to take me. So I have to keep that in mind. Let's check this base really quick here. You can build this in a custom game. That's fine. Let me see. Let me buy this bad Johnny. This one might not. Does this one spawn? Okay, it does have a bench. So this was probably what I'll do. Again, rules will probably still be open, but here you go. This is probably where. Ooh, I haven't saved that sucker yet. Let me save it. Okay. I have not saved yet. I keep doing this, not saving. So this is my well, let's see. Challenge Charlie boat. Okay, challenge Charlie boat. And let's save a backup as that. This tends to be my method, is always have a backup like this. All right, so here are my challenge Charlie. Perfect. This is perfect. Okay, so this is the beginner base size. That's perfect. You're going to have 50,000, I think, is what I'm going to do. So it's 20,000 more, 30,000 more than you start. And one of the reasons I figured that I've only done a couple missions in career build series so far. I haven't done anything ridiculous. I think it was two missions. And I don't think I picked up a crate. And I have 50 grand. So if you did two missions in a crate, that would give you 50 grand. That's probably going to be what you have here. But notice, so this will spawn here at this island. All right, so this is going to be the challenge criteria. You can download. You can do a new world with that save. 192,837 is the seed. It's going to spawn here. I'm going to send the sucker up to here. All right, it's going to fill with oil, and it's going to come down here, and it's going to sell diesel. Now, do I run this whole thing or not? Probably I might. It's actually probably easy. So what I'll probably do is make a constraint on there. You have to have a keep active block. And so if your vessel's slow, that's fine. And what I'll do is I'll do keep active on there and send it. I would like some sort of autopilot would be helpful. I may or may not make that a restriction. I might put it at least a single point autopilot. And so it will travel from this base to here, up to here. I may not run the whole thing, but this is going to be kind of the thought process is you would want to head from here to there and then sell here. And so that will be the loop. So that's a nice little loop there. So I'm thinking that's what we're going to be running. I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure of that because this will spawn perfectly. This looks great. All right, but see how it's, so we could add a little bit of mass to the front on this, but I'm just kind of showing you how the dynamics of getting the ship stable is important. Now, you notice we had this full of water, we had this full of oil, and in both conditions, it is stable. It's sitting at the water line. And so one of the things you can do is you can have an automatic system that essentially says, as I pump oil in, right? So you're going to be traveling with water in here in your U-ballast. When you get to the refinery and you're going to fill it with diesel, which is what we'll do, you're going to be taking on mass, right? Well, you need to get rid of some mass. Well, that's why you use water ballast. Is as it fills in here, it's going to pump out. So really simple way to do this is, so we know our center point is right here, right? So I'm going to go here. I'm going to punch into this wall. And so right here somewhere. So right about there, definitely. So right there. All right. So this is how I do it. Now, they don't have to be sticking out. You can make them stick in. That's fine. I put a couple altimeters here. All right. It's very simple how I make this run. So you have two altimeters here, right? And so let's spawn this in with the altimeters in now. And so I'll go over, this segment's going to be just talking about the actual, some of those systems. So see there, it's showing about 0.0 something. Notice it's going up and down. It's right there. All right. So this is pretty simple how you make this system work. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I want you guys to kind of think of it on your own. But we have water in here, right? We have water in both tanks. One thing you could do it with just one open tank. You could put segment baffles in, but real simple. Let me just kind of show you how I tend to do this. And I deleted meter out. So there's a meter in there anyway. So we have a, let's put a fluid port in there. So I'll show you really quickly how I make this system work. And so what you want to do is put in a system like this. This is on the T800. I have this. So one of the reasons this is nice is the T800 holds something like 400,000 liters of oil or diesel. Generally, I only run oil in that tanker. I did a trip from the Arctic down to the base. It took 8 hours. It took about 2 hours to fill. No, it took like an hour to fill, maybe 40 minutes to fill, and like over 2 hours to empty. And it took me about 5 hours to go from the Arctic down to the refinery. And so it was an 8-hour round trip. Well, what I did was I went and I plugged it into the oil platform, and I left and I went and did chores. I left the house. I did whatever I wanted, and it automatically took care of my ballast, and it did it with this altimeter system. And so I didn't have to sit there and pay attention to it. I could let it go run. I'm actually not going to be filling this and emptying this. If I know how full your tank is, I know how fast it's going to fill. I'm gonna simulate all this. I'm not actually gonna go to the island. I'm gonna test it a little bit. I'm gonna extrapolate. I'm gonna go into the, I'm gonna go for say a minute. I'm gonna see how fast you go for a minute. I know the distance. I can estimate. I'm gonna estimate how long it takes to go. All right, and I'm going to estimate your travel times. I'm not going to do it for full. It would just take too much time, frankly. All right, so you're going to have a filler there, and you're going to also have, you'd have a filler in here. And so what's going to happen is as you add mass, what's happening? As I add fuel, right, or oil, it's going to sink us lower and lower. Well, those altimeters are going to start to read negative. And so when the altimeters read negative, what are they going to do? They're going to turn on the pump, and they're going to pump the water out. So let's make this really simple here. This isn't necessarily the ideal system. The other thing I recommend is you're going to have problems if you're trying to pump water out below the water line. What I always do is I tend to put my pump outs at or above the water line. And I do that because you're fighting the water pressure if you don't do that. So what I would recommend to you guys is put your pump outs at or above the water line like that. All right. That makes it so much easier to pump out. If you're fighting water pressure, it's going to take you much longer, and it's going to be less responsive. And you're going to need more pumps. And so you can do something very simple like this. And let's do. Let's see, pump there. Let me see what I want to do here. So these are going to be outs. So let me go there. Let's go like this. So I'll show you. This is just a very simple way to do this here. All right, so that's my out pumps. Now, there's no reason why you can't pump in from the water level. And so what I'll often do is, where's my top of this here? Right there. So you can do something like this. I'm not going to show you the full system. I'm just going to I'm trying to help you guys with this. Again, I want to make sure it's possible and it's not going to cause you problems. But so that's above the water line. That's going to, or at the water line. That's going to give you the least amount of resistance. You can easily pump in like this. And so this is often how I'll do it, is something like this. And so a real simple system here. I'll kind of show you guys how to do this is, all right, so now those are 2 pumps going in. You can do this with valves. You can do this with 1 set of pumps. You can do multiple set of pumps. Just remember, you have a cost constraint. All right, so how would this work? So if the altimeter, so you could do it pretty simply. Let's say you have, right, you don't want it to constantly put your pumps on. It's just going to eat up electricity. So if you saw when this is sitting in the water, let's look at the altimeter really quick. All right, so the altimeter there, it's fluctuating between a negative 0.1 and positive 0.1. All right, so real simple. Negative 0.1, positive 0.1 with it just generally oscillating, okay? And so what we can do there is, let's make a really quick microcontroller, and I'll show you how we can make this work. All right, and this is the auto ballast. Auto ballast. We, unless we state that we want it to be different, we always want it to be at the water line. Okay. Let's see. So let's start putting some logic nodes in there. What I generally do is I'll add a keypad, so that'll be a number input. That'll be desired level. And so one of the reasons you do this is, let's say you have to go in somewhere where you remember how those oil tankers I showed you, they were sitting up very high in the water because they were going to dock. With a boat this small, you're probably not going to have to worry about hitting the ground. But let's say you're going somewhere in game and you want to rise up out of the water. Well, you can set your desired level. And then what you want to do is you want to do an output to pump in. And you want to do an output to pump out. All right, then you want, let's do a number input port alt. Well, let's make this a little bit more complicated. Number input star alt. Okay, port start now, port altimeter and starboard altimeter. And I'm actually going to make this more challenging. Pump in, pump out. So it's going to be pump in port. Let's see. Pump out port, and I'll show you why I do this. This is going to be pump in star. That's going to be pump in port. No, pump out star. Okay. And so reason we're doing this is this will also help us with whether it's listing port or starboard. Okay. So the commodity tank, you can segment it if you want. I'm not going to bother. I'm going to leave it 1 tank. But these I'm going to actually segment, and this will give me the ability to, by segmenting this tank, it will also give me the ability to do listing port or starboard. And so what we could do is go like this. That's too high. That's right on the deck, right there. Okay. And there are simpler, more, more elegant ways to do this. I'm just doing it like this because, again, I'm doing quick and dirty just to show you guys. You guys can wow me with your systems. I'm just making them simple right here. So here we go. And so this is also going to control for roll stability. All right, so this is the auto ballast system. So let's say I want to add water into this starboard tank. It comes in, it goes through, it's in the starboard tank. Let's say I want to take it out of the starboard tank. This pump comes on, it goes out. And the same thing with port. And so let's go ahead and hook this up. So you have the desired level, that would be a keypad. You have the port altimeter, which is, I'm trying to think which side port. This is port. This is starboard. This is going to be pump out port. This is going to be pump in starboard, pump in port, pump out starboard. Okay, and let's get a keypad. All right, and now let's play with our system, and I'll show you kind of what you can do here. So let's go keypad. We'll go in here. And so this will default as 0. 0 means we want no water going in or out. Okay? It means we're right at the water line. We're good. If I say I want negative 1, it's going to, if it's negative 1, well, I need to add water because we're at 0. I want negative 1. It's going to add water to sink us. If I say I want it at 1, it means I want 1 meter above the water line. It's going to lose water to raise it. All right. So let's go in the logic here, and we'll get moving. All right, so all right, here's desired level. Okay, so we can make this super simple. We could PID control it. I'm just going to make it super simple. I'm going to do a greater than, and less than. There are more elegant ways to do this. Like I said, there's certainly more elegant ways to do this. So let's see. Plug that in like that. Okay. So my desired level, if the desired level, okay, so if my desired level, let's actually do it like this. Let's do desired level on top. All right, so if my desired level, so essentially what I'm setting is greater. So let's say I set this as 1. So I want us to be 1 meter above the water. So if I want us to be above, right, and the port altimeter is showing, so if my desired level is greater than what the altimeter is showing me, right, my desired level is greater than what this is, that means that if my desired level, so if I want 1 and this is 0, right, I need to, so if I want 1 and this is 0, I need to lose water. So because I need to lose water, I need to pump out, okay? And then I actually want this like this. All right, we'll do port first. This is opposite. If I want to be at 1 and this is less than that, okay, so if my desired level is less than that, so that'd be if this is negative 1, I would need to pump in. So pretty simple there. All right, so go like this. So this sets up our logic for this. Let's go down there, you control. All right, and the same thing is going to happen here. Just make sure they're the right way. Out. Yep, there's a backwards, of course. And again, you can make this more elegant. Again, I'm not trying to make it for you. I'm trying to show you some simple stuff that will help you guys kind of get some notions on what will help you and what will work well for this. All right, so this is going to pump. So if the desired level, again, say 1, is greater than this, I need to pump out so that boat will rise. If I say I want negative 1, so I want 1 meter below the water, so this is going to just, it will pump automatically. So let's play with this. And so let's go ahead and update that. And then I'm going to play with my, so let's first start by using our keypad, and we will either sink or raise this boat. All right, so you can see it's going to be clicking the pumps on as it stabilizes, but notice we're getting a little bit of flow, but not much. It's just clicking them on. It shouldn't be burning up. All right, so see we're right at the water line there. All right, and currently this isn't going to work because we are full of oil. Let's go ahead and we'll drag. So right now I have no oil in my oil tank. All right, let's put in full water. So it should be seawater, seawater, seawater. I'm just using this because I can't actually put jet fuel in there. So we have these. Both of these are full of seawater now. So our ballast tanks are full. Now see how when it goes below the water, it turns the pump on, then it shuts the pump off. That's going to continually change our ballast water until the altimeter. Now see how it's tilting, which is kind of screwing us up a little bit, but that's fine. So now let's say that I want to go 1 meter above the water. 1. So I want to be 1 meter above the water line. That's going to keep that pump going until we take all the water out and we raise up a meter. All right, so it's going to take us a little while, but you can see the fundamentals of how this is going to allow us to set this. Most of the time we're going to be at 0, right? I want to sit at the water line. And so this completely automates the system. And I'll show you how it automates it. All right. So this allows us to either increase or decrease our level. And you can see the boat's coming up out of the water. See we're getting progressively more and more white sticking out of the water. So this is going to actively keep us there. So this, by having a keypad there, it allows me to either raise us or lower us out of the water. And so let's do what the whole point of this is. So right now we are full of water, right? It's going to default us at 0. It's going to try to keep us at the water line. Now I'm going to add I'm going to start to add some oil. So let's say I put in 20% of the oil, right? If I fill my oil tank 20%, well, what should the ballast water do? Get out of there, right? So the ballast water should attempt to get out of there. You see how we're sitting too low? That oil, that 20% oil is dragging us lower. Notice our ballast tanks are pumping out. All right, so our ballast tanks are going to keep pumping out automatically until it gets us to the water line. All right. So what this is going to allow, what this will allow you to do is, again, you can hook up to the refinery. You can go run errands if it's going to take you 20 minutes to fill it, and it will automatically pump out just as much water as it needs to keep you at the water line. You do not have to sit there and babysit it. All right, so let's go and let's fill our commodity tank up to 60%. All right. Now, this will progressively do this as you're, doing it, so it won't need to pump out as much. But you see how, because we added a bunch of oil, it's going to continually pump out our ballast tanks to get us above the water. So that the black line is always sitting at the water or above. Currently it's right where I want it. It's pretty good. All right, but you see how this is a nice little... So see how it's going to keep pumping out? It's going to keep pumping out until we get there. Eventually we'll do it. I'm not going to sit there the whole time. But so this is just I just kind of wanted to get you guys started. And I kind of wanted to impress upon you what's important in this challenge. I will come up with a rule set for this probably before this video comes out, and it will be posted. This video will be posted alongside if you want to watch it. It'll be bookmarked in next and all that. I have to do all of that. But the main thing I wanted to show you was how to change the stability of this. Again, I could probably add just a little bit of mass in the front, but notice we're coming up out of the water. You see how we're rising? So think of it, we're at the refinery, we're plugged in. You go away and do the dishes. See, it just stopped. It's pumped out just as much water as it needs to be able to keep us at the water line. Perfect. See, it's done. And notice, see how we're rotating? Because the center of gravity is at the center of buoyancy. Notice how we're rotating there? So notice the pump's not on and off all the time. If we put the altimeter back here, it would be on, off, on, off. If it was here, it would be on, off, on, off. It's rotating right around there. It's pitching. The center of pitch is right there. All right. So just thought you guys might like to see this. I like to test these things out myself first to know that this is not going to cause you guys problems. The reason I did this was a ton of challenges that I was part of. The person putting the challenge on never bothered testing out if it was possible, if the rules were going to work, if the rules were not going to work. So I want to test it out. This boat will be joining the career build series when it's done. I need a tanker at some point. I'll probably use a lot of barges, but I wanted to have a tanker. So this boat will be finished. It will be finished in the career build series, but I want to get you guys started, and I didn't want to do too much. I don't want you guys copying this. The fundamentals of this challenge, the rule set will be out first. You'll be able to read this. The spirit of the challenge is to make a tanker. If you're not going to impress me with a hydrofoil that goes 100 meters per second. It's just not the point. It's kind of, is it cheating? No. Are hydrofoils real boats? Yeah. But are you trying to skirt the spirit of the challenge? Yes, you are. And, there's a difference between following the spirit of the challenge and skirting the spirit of the challenge. Be creative. Do what you want to do. You build a hydrofoil. I'm not going to, I'm not going to savage it, but you talk about the captain's favorite. One of the reasons I have captain's favorite on there is part of the reason I often put what follows the spirit of the challenge on there. And that's kind of the point of that is, some people made some really cool planes for Build Challenge Alpha, but they weren't really good trainers. And so they lost some points on that because, they wasn't following the spirit of the challenge. So that's probably going to be one of the grading criteria I put on there. Again, the rule set will be out, so, be out there. But I'm probably going to put spirit of the challenge as a new criteria on my build challenges. Are you following the spirit of the challenge? If it's not, then it's going to lose points on that. And so there'll be, again, points winner, captain's favorite, and there will be community. And I'm happy that the community's favorite is often different than mine. That really shows, I'm happy with that. Community can pick whatever they want. So I hope you guys enjoy this. I hope that you found this informative. A bunch of people have been asking for some stability stuff. I don't know why I just did that, but I don't know why it's doing this. But it should also be dynamically testing for roll. Let me check, make sure it's not acting funky. One nice thing is I can actually swim in these tanks. So this tank is empty. That's why. What is it doing here? I must have hooked something up backwards. But the other thing is this should dynamically take care of roll. So see, this one's full. So something's up with this. This should be pumping in on the starboard side. On the port side, I don't know why it is. So I hooked something up backwards, but it should also account for roll. And the nice thing with that is if you have multiple segmented oil tanks, it should account for roll. It should take care of that roll as well. So hope you guys found this informative. Hope you're looking forward to the challenge. It will be a month-long challenge. I definitely want you guys to take your time. I want you to come up with some nice boats. I want some systems in there. We will be having an open discussion period where you can question the rules. You can ask for new rules. You can get rules clarification, but they will be locked at the end of that period. And once they're locked, I'm not changing them again. We all need to follow the same set of rules once they're locked. It's not fair to the people who spend 100 hours the first week and then they're busy the next 2 weeks to have to change their build because the rules get changed. So hope you guys are looking forward to that. I know there's been a little verbose, but I hope you found this to be interesting and kind of see some build methods. So we'll see you later.